Okay, so let's dive right in. We're going to unpack a story today that's, well, it's not just some ancient history lesson. It's about the choices you and I are making every single day. Choices about what we do with the gifts we've been given. And this beautiful chant from the great Saint Yared, it just sets the stage perfectly. This comes from the 6th Sunday of the Great Fast, a Sunday that has a very special name. The name itself, Gebre Hier, isn't just a title. It's really a challenge, isn't it? It's an invitation for every single one of us to look in the mirror and ask, am I living up to this? Am I that good and faithful servant? So to really get what this means, Jesus tells this parable in Matthew chapter 25. It's about a master who entrusts his property to his servants right before he goes on a long journey. And that journey, that represents Christ's ascension to heaven, leaving us here to carry on his work. So the master gives 5 talents to one servant, 2 to another, and 1 to a third. And the Bible is super clear about this part. He gives to each according to their own ability. Nobody gets more than they can handle. God knows what you're capable of. But here's the crucial question, right? We hear the word talents and we think money, but this parable isn't really about money at all. These talents symbolize something so much deeper, something way more personal to each of us. The talents are God's grace. Through things like baptism, God gives every single one of us gifts to work with. His teachings, his commandments, and those unique abilities and passions he has literally planted inside of you. Nobody gets left out. Everyone gets something. And those gifts can look so different for everyone. Maybe it's being the person who can explain a tough math problem to a friend. Or maybe you're the one who always knows what to say to cheer someone up when they're having a bad day. It could even be having the guts to stand up for what's right when everyone else is just going along. Those are your talents. So what happens next in the story is huge. We see 2 totally different responses to getting these gifts. And these 2 responses, they represent the fundamental choice that you and I face every single day of our lives. Just look at this contrast. It's night and day. The first 2 servants, they immediately get to work. No hesitation. They start using their gifts. But the third guy, he lets fear and laziness completely take over. He literally digs a hole and buries his gift, choosing to do absolutely nothing. Now listen to this part because it's so important. The master says the exact same thing to the servant with 5 talents and the one with 2. The reward is identical. You see, the point is that God doesn't grade us on the quantity of our gifts, but on our faithfulness and our diligence in using whatever it is we've been given. All right, now let's zoom in on that third servant for a minute, because his excuse, well, it's something we can all relate to, especially when we're dealing with things like peer pressure or just feeling like we're not good enough. Listen to his reasoning here. That's not an apology. That is an accusation. He's blaming his master. He says, I was afraid. His decision to do nothing wasn't born out of humility. It was born out of fear and a really messed up view of who his master was. And that brings the question right back to us, doesn't it? What's the gift that you might be hiding right now? Is it your kindness because you're worried people will think you're soft? Is it your faith because you're afraid of what your friends might say? Are we letting the fear of what other people think cause us to bury the very gifts God gave us? So this whole parable really boils down to a choice between 2 paths. The path of fear that leads to doing nothing, to making excuses, to hiding. But the path of faith, that leads to courageous action, loyalty, and a deep trust in God. And think about where he buried his talent. In the ground. This is all about getting caught up in worldly stuff, caring more about what's popular or what's easy than about what's spiritually right. This connects directly to another one of Jesus' stories, the parable of the sower, where the worries of this world are like thorns that literally choke out the seed of faith and stop any real growth from happening. So, if fear is the enemy, how do we fight back, right? How do we choose that path of faith, especially when it feels like the harder path? Well, thankfully, the scriptures give us a pretty clear battle plan. St. Paul tells us to be like good soldiers. And what are soldiers? They're courageous, they're disciplined, they're resilient. They don't run away from a challenge. Living a life of faith, especially when you're trying to navigate high school, it requires that same kind of strength. And then St. Peter gives us this really intense image of a roaring lion. He's telling us, hey, be vigilant, wake up, be aware, because just being lazy or apathetic, just going with the flow, that makes us vulnerable. We have to actively resist and stand firm in our faith. Okay, so this ancient story isn't just some lesson to think about and then forget. It's a mission. It's a challenge for you, starting right now, this week, right there in the hallways of your school. Here are 3 super small, super practical things you can actually do. These aren't huge, dramatic gestures. They're small things. Remember, the servants were entrusted with a few things. But doing these small things shows great faithfulness. This is how you start trading with your talents. And here's how you avoid falling into the trap of that third servant. It all comes down to your choices. Choose prayer over endlessly scrolling on your phone. Choose to hang out with friends who actually build you up, not tear you down. Choose to look outward and serve other people instead of being focused only on yourself. And look, this takes real courage. None of us can do it on our own. So let's actually ask God to help us, to give us the strength to put Him first in our choices, and to say yes when He calls us to use our gifts for somebody else. Being a good and faithful servant means taking that risk. It means choosing to love, choosing to act, choosing to step out in faith, even when you're scared, trusting that God is right there with you every single step of the way. So, I'm going to leave you with this final thought. The master of the house is coming back. And on that day of judgment, we all want to be the one who steps forward, not with a list of excuses, but with the fruits of our faith, ready and waiting to hear Him say, "Well done, good and faithful servant."